So for those of you who haven't been following the news, the protests in Seattle were no laughing matter. Um, Seattle has had some of the most violent scenes coming out of it. The police were banned from using tear gas by the mayor and the city council, and then they used tear gas again. And things just escalated to a point that protesters just started blocking off streets of about 6 square blocks of downtown Seattle over in the Capitol Hill district. And basically, what happened is the mayor ordered the police to back down, and so that 6 blocks that these protesters have just been inhabiting and refusing to let go has almost become its own commonwealth within the city of Seattle. It's yeah, I mean it's an experiment, I would say, in like just kind of like libertarian socialist kind of an ecosphere. No cops aren't allowed. There's no real government overlooking it. It's just a bunch of people kind of living freely and doing as they will. And the weirdest thing about this is that there is so much misinformation coming out from right-wing sources that you really don't know what's going on. Fox News was caught photoshopping images that they had taken there. There were other, stories stating that, they had ran out of food. There wasn't any water. People were sick.
Oh man, absolutely. So let me let's crank the wheel back a little bit. So the way you started the intro, arco communist, libertarian hellhole, it's all black boots and thugs everywhere. Let's be very clear. No. Basically give the listeners a little bit of background. If you've never been to Seattle, if you've never heard of Capitol Hill, another city neighborhood you might think of would be like Brooklyn or maybe like Wrigleyville in Chicago. This is a very, 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 very liberal area. It's you could see in the photos behind me, the art that's spray painted up on the buildings behind me. And for those that you don't know, this is a photo that I actually took on Saturday when I was down at the CHAZ. And so what Capitol Hill is, again, it's a it's a neighborhood, it's a boys' town, it's whatever you want to call it. It's your kind of bohemian kind of hangout spot for young affluent folks. There's a college nearby, lots of bars, awesome nightlife. So again, this is if once social gathering, social unrest, young people protesting, naturally this is the neighborhood where this is going to happen. So what happened down there? Now, I will say I am a resident of Seattle. I do not live in Capitol Hill. I live nearby. I'm about 2 miles away. I rode my bike down there. It's a quick bus ride. And so what I experienced was, weekend rolled around. I did my usual thing, gaming with the boys, having a couple beers. I woke up on Sunday and it was a text message from my friends like, dude, are you okay? What's going on in Seattle? This and that. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, whatever, dude. Like, we spent all night gaming. So anyway, roll out of bed, start watching the news. There's just like all this talk about this like takeover and people are drawing guns and all this and that. There's a lot of protests going on. Yes, there are protests going on. And basically what had happened was that the Seattle Police Department has a very long history of being very, very, very brutal and very violent to the public and in public spaces. There's plenty of videos before all these events of specifically Seattle cops doing stuff. So you're in a neighborhood that already has a lot of like-minded folks that are very left-leaning, that are very upset about the cause, that or I should say are actually doing something for the cause. So you have a lot of folks that are gathering in an area. You have a lot of violent cops. I cannot point fingers. I wasn't there. I don't know who initially started the thing, but I can tell you that there are some very, very, very clear videos. One, namely, that came from a rooftop at Capitol Hill, where you see a gal with an umbrella get pulled by the cops into like the swarm of cops, and then tear gas just starts going everywhere.
Hmm.
So you have a crowd of, I don't know, 6 to 10,000 people that's, getting tear gassed. Well, for, I want to say, like 10 to 11 days straight, those cops stood in this intersection, power washing the fucking streets with tear gas, and people would get maced up. They'd take a shower and they'd come right the fuck back. And so what I put together was that the cops ran out of resources. They got tired because their only tactic of violence and brutality failed, and they
Yep.
had no other options, and so they left. There
Yep.
was no takeover. There was no storming of this. There was no brandishing of guns. There was no battle of, Capitol Hill. What it was we have sprayed these people with tear gas for 12 days and they're still coming back. What do we do? The
Yeah.
answer is, let them figure it out. Well, that I shouldn't say that's what the answer is. Their answer was let them figure it out, and we'll pull back, because it's just like, I don't know. We saw police precincts abandoning ship in Minneapolis. We're
Yeah.
seeing it in
Yeah.
Seattle. We're seeing it in Atlanta. We're seeing it all over the place. And what happened when the cops left? The violence disappeared.
Yeah.
Correlation or causation, man, I don't know. Again, I wasn't there for the beginning of this whole thing.
Well, well, I mean, a lot of this movement in general, though, is about changing the way officers perceive interaction with the people, because the only thing they know how to do is force, and that's just because of decades of training and militarization of that training. That's the only way they know how to respond. So I mean, the one thing that the protesters did do is, I mean, it's like an unmovable or an unmovable object, an unstoppable force, right? One's going to give eventually, and the people just force the police, force Seattle police in particular, and other cities all over the country in other instances, to
I mean, I would
realize that
even
force
be
isn't the
hesitant of using the
option.
word force, man. It's like, I would say withstood,
Yeah.
like I said, like they didn't show up with batons and molotovs with the intention that, hey, we're gonna take over this public space. They didn't show up. They showed up with umbrellas and vinegar and water bottles and masks to cover their face and their eyes to protect themselves.
Mhm.
Pieces of plywood so they wouldn't get beat with batons. You know what I mean? So it's like, when you see, like, I got a lot of footage, a lot of videos that I want to show you. When you see the number of people that are down there, like, if we wanted to burn down the city, it would have been burned down.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, we're talking like the number of cops, like you're talking 150 to maybe 300 cops at one time, versus a crowd of 10,000 to upwards of 50, 60,000. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
do the math. I mean, if they really wanted those videos of what Fox News has been putting out there to be real, we can make it real.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening. What's happening are people are getting fed, restaurants are donating food, people are getting band-aids. Like, we're healing, man. Like, it's this
Yeah.
place of healing. So